You are listening to part 19A of the podcast series, 21 Qualities of a Leader.
Quality number 19, servanthood. Let me put it this way. To get ahead, put others first. You see, a true leader serves people, serves their best interest, and in so doing will not always be popular, may not always impress, but because true leaders are motivated by loving concern rather than a desire for personal glory, they are willing to pay the price. This is not in your notes, but it's something I wrote down in my notes I wanted to pass on to you. Servanthood is not about position or skill. It's about attitude. You have undoubtedly met people in the service positions who have poor attitudes towards servanthood. The rude worker at the government agency, the waiter who can't be bothered with taking your order, the store clerk who talks on the phone with a friend instead of helping you. So what does a servant leader look like? Number one, puts others ahead of his own agenda. That's what a servant looks like. It's one of my people principles. It's the patience principle. The patience principle says basically, the man who goes alone can start the day, but he who travels with another must wait until the other is ready. Let me tell you the difference between a leader and most people. A leader never finishes the finish line alone. Their goal has never been to be the first one across the finish line because they realize that that's not a leader's responsibility. The leader says, I'm not going to finish across the line alone. I'm going to take people with me. And so the leader understands this servanthood principle of, I will go slower in my life so that I can take more people on the journey. I will give up some of my own personal conveniences because I want to add value to others. Classic example of that. A couple of years ago, I was in Seattle doing a leadership conference for a corporation. And the other speaker was Jim Whittaker. And Jim Whittaker was the first American to ever climb Mount Everest. And I thought, oh, this will be so much fun because we're going to have lunch together. So I had my list of questions because I learned a long time ago, if you go to lunch with somebody, you're either talking or listening. You're either sharing what you know or you're learning from somebody else. And so I decided a long time ago, whenever I'm with somebody, I'm going to ask as many questions as I can because that's where the learning goes. And so I sat down with Jim Whittaker, and before he could say anything, I said, I got to ask you a question. I said, of all of your accomplishments, because I said, I know you have been on top of every major mountain in the world. Of all of your personal accomplishments, which one fulfilled you the very most? Now, I thought he would say, I personally thought he'd say, the first time I went to the top of Mount Everest, because he's been up there several times. That's what I thought he'd say. He said, this will surprise you. He said, what has given me the most fulfillment is not any time that I have climbed to the top of the mountain by myself. And he went through the different mountains he'd been on top of. He said, that was wonderful. But he said, what gives me the most fulfillment of all my mountain climbing is I have taken more people to the top of Mount Everest than any other climber. And he said, do you know how fulfilling it is to take people to a level that you know they would have never been able to get on their own? Now that's servanthood. That's the person who understands that what you really want to do is put others ahead of your own personal agenda. Or the exchange principle. Again, it's a great principle. Instead of putting others in their place, put yourself in their place. Okay. So a servant leader puts others ahead of his own agenda. Number two, a servant leader possesses the security to serve. Last week I was in St. Louis doing a conference for about 1,000 people on how to develop teams. It was a teamwork conference taken from my book, The 17 Laws of Teamwork. And I was talking to them about how do you know that you have a team that's going to be effective? So I was trying to give them some tangible things that they could kind of get their hands around. And what I did for them, I want to do for you now, because I think this is so key in this area of servanthood and also developing people, developing yourself. Here's what I said to them. I was talking to them about team players. I'm going to talk to you about just an individual for a moment. A person must be secure enough. Remember, that's one of the qualities of a great leader, security. A person must be secure enough to stretch. And a person must be secure enough to serve. and they are opposites. Are you with me? In other words, I told them, if you're developing a team of people around you, I was talking about their inner circle a little bit. I said, you want to get people that are secure enough that they'll stretch, they'll get out of their comfort zone. In other words, they'll reach. They'll do things that are not comfortable for themselves because they want to grow, they want to learn, they want to get in unexplored territory. So I said, you want to have players on your team that are secure enough that they'll stretch, get out of their comfort zone, but I said you also want to have players that are secure enough that they'll stoop to serve others. Wide apart. One I'm stretching, one I'm serving.